Welcome to my second video of the third chapter of making asteroids inside of GameMaker. And in this video, we're going to program the collision of asteroids with other asteroids. Right now, you can see that they just pass through each other. But we want them to bounce off of each other. And I'm not going to give the most physics-based solution. They're basically just going to hit another asteroid and then bounce 180 degrees away. And then we'll make sure that they don't get stuck inside of each other. So with that, let's begin. So one of the most versatile events that we're going to use in everything GameMaker related is the collision event. So I'm inside of Object Asteroid Parent, and I'm going to go to Add Event, and I want to go down to Collisions with Objects, with Enemies, and with the Object Asteroid Parent. And so the clever thing about how we are going to have this set up is by using the parent colliding with the parent, that's going to allow all the possible combinations of other asteroids hitting other asteroids. We don't have to program a special one for if a big asteroid hits a small asteroid, or if a big asteroid hits a big asteroid, or if a small asteroid hits a big asteroid. We actually just only have to use this. And then this will be the event that happens if any asteroid bumps into any other asteroid. One of the advantages to using this parenting setup. So the description here is it's basically going to bump into another asteroid, 180 degree rotation. So we're basically just going to spin the asteroid 180 degrees. It's not the most physics-based solution, but it works for the game. So we're just going to add 180 to direction. It's not, like I said, not the most fancy. And then we're going to try to push away. So push away from other asteroid, essentially reset the position. There's a variable called x previous and y previous. And these variables remember the previous location on the previous frame. So when this collision event happens, it happens during the step event. So x previous is recorded essentially at the start of a frame. And so the collision is going to happen during the step window. And as a result, it'll jump us back to where it was at the start of the frame before it collided with this other asteroid. But now we're going to be pointing a different direction, so we shouldn't collide with the new asteroid again. And so, like I said, not the most physics-based solution, but good enough for us to make a really basic asteroids game. So we should be able to test this. And what's also going to happen here is this event is likely to fire on both of these asteroids simultaneously. So we should see both asteroids ending up changing their rotation correctly. So let's see. So those two asteroids over there bounced correctly. These two are about to bounce. I don't know if we're gonna get another one. So looking for, oh, these two might hit. No, there we go. That might bounce. Nope. But those bounced. So we can see that this is working as kind of intended. So if we try to shuffle this up a few, we can see that these bounces are working. Now, if you wanted to interact with the object that you're colliding with, there is a keyword called other. And so you can say other.direction. So maybe one of the mistakes that could occur is if you attempted to tell the other asteroid to rotate as well. Well, what ends up happening is because this event is likely to fire on both asteroids simultaneously when the collision occurs, then the first asteroid rotates themselves and the other guy 180, then the other asteroid rotates 180 to themselves and the other guy, thus undoing the entire thing. So if we actually tried to address the other asteroid here, notice how they end up canceling each other's bounce off and they just get stuck. And we just got asteroids getting stuck on each other. So there are times where you might need to interact with the other object, and we actually will when the lasers start hitting asteroids. But for this specific case, we don't really need to use other. Now, the other thing that we want to address is the possibility that asteroids could get stuck in each other. So if I were to open this up and take two asteroids and place them inside of each other. Now, when we're building the levels, we should be smart enough not to do this, but it is very possible that when asteroids screen wrap, or maybe when we spawn smaller asteroids and one of the big asteroids explodes, that asteroids might get stuck in each other. So we need some kind of code to push these two asteroids away from each other so that they don't get stuck and locked like this during gameplay. And so we want to handle that during the end step of asteroid parent. So end step happens after all the collisions have been processed. So after all of these collisions have been processed, end step is going to happen. And we're going to handle getting these things unstuck during end step. So in addition to screen wrapping, we're going to also unstick asteroids. So the first part of unsticking is actually figuring out if we're colliding with another asteroid. So check for and get a reference to another asteroid we are colliding with. So that command is instance underscore place x comma y, so where I'm currently at, basically checking my hitbox's size of position to see if there's another asteroid. And by using asteroid parent, that's going to include all other types of asteroids, little asteroids, big asteroids. If you go on to create giant asteroids and tiny asteroids, this will just update for as many asteroids you have set to be children of the parents. So this variable other asteroid is either going to be equal to a reference to whatever we're colliding with, or it's going to be GameMaker's equivalent of null. And so GameMaker's equivalent of null is no one. So if other asteroid is not equal to no one, so this means that other asteroid is an asteroid, we want to push these two things away. Now, let me pull up MS Paint and show you kind of what I'm thinking of to push them away. So here's one asteroid. And then maybe we have, let's just say this red one's the other asteroid. So the black asteroid's the one that's actually executing its code at this moment. And so here's the center of the red asteroid, and here's the center of the black asteroid. Now, what I basically want to do is calculate this vector. So I want to know what angle this is going to be. So I essentially want to start from the other asteroids x and y and get the vector from that x and y to my x and y, because then that's going to tell me which direction I want to go if I want to start pushing away from this asteroid. Then I can invert that vector to figure out which way I want to push the other asteroid away. So we're going to call this get an away vector. So we'll call this away angle equals point underscore direction other underscore asteroid x other asteroid y to my x and y, so just xy. And so that's going to give me that angle. Now, what I want to do is then compute a certain amount of x and y. So there's a command. I mean, I could use trigonometry, but basically I want to figure out how much x I want to push away and how much y I want to push away from that new vector to add to my current position. And so there's a command to do that, and we'll do x plus equals length dir underscore x, open parentheses, 2 comma, away angle. So this is a magnitude 2 vector. So assuming it's a perfect 45-degree angle, it'll basically be like 1.44 units it'll push away. So you could increase this too if things are getting stuck too easily. This executes every frame, so if we have two asteroids stuck inside of each other, they should push themselves out pretty quickly. If you make this number too large, they're basically just gonna like teleport huge distances away. And it is actually pretty difficult to compute some kind of like radius of each asteroid. Because they're not really circles, they're elliptical. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing for y. And so make sure you change both the variable we're adding to y, and then this is now length dir y. And it basically gets the y component of that vector. So it does the trigonometry for you, essentially. So we're going to push this asteroid away from the other. And then now we're going to push the other asteroid. And to do that, we're just going to say other underscore asteroid.x, other asteroid.y. And instead of using 2, I'll just use -2 because that'll be the opposite vector. And so that should push the other one away. Now, if this executes on both asteroids at the end of a frame, we end up pushing a total magnitude of 4 away, which should be good enough to get most asteroids away from each other in a single frame. I'm very wary of using a while loop here because you could switch this from an if to a while and then place this command back at the end. But my concern with that is you might, if you get into a situation where two asteroids are trying to push each other away in a while loop, and it works out in such a way that they end up pushing into a totally separate asteroid, you could get yourself stuck in an infinite loop. So I'm not super wild about using some kind of loop here to kind of guarantee that I get pushed out. I'd rather just execute this one frame at a time and hope that two asteroids will unstick each other over time than trying to use a while loop and doing it in just one go. So this should push them out of each other, and we can verify that. If I open up the room again, I've got my two stuck asteroids. But this time when I hit play, because I have that code that pushes them out, you can kind of see that they like, if you watch closely, they kind of smoothly push each other away. It looks kind of weird because the push is independent of the direction the asteroid wants to travel. And that's just because if I let the asteroids push through the direction they're traveling, like let's say that this black asteroid that wants to push, like its direction that it randomly generates is this way, then if I use that to determine how it's going to push away, it's basically just going to teleport to the other side of the red asteroid, and that's going to look incredibly silly. So we basically just want to push away from the centers. We kind of want to get this guy going that way and that one going that way. So that's getting the asteroids to bounce, screen wrap, and do their behaviors. So let's throw in being able to impact onto the player. And now we will work on lives and kind of a restarting system in a future set of code, but let's at least get the collision with the player working. And then also in the process of doing that, we can look at how to set up a sprite sheet. And that's kind of a cool skill. So I'm pulling these asteroids out of each other so they're no longer stuck. So let's handle the collision over on the player. And again, the really useful and neat thing about having the parent asteroid is I don't have to program a collision with each possible asteroid. I just have to program a collision with the parent asteroid. So I just, on the player, I add an event, collision with the asteroid parent, So the description here is going to be collision with asteroid, explode, and respawn. But we're not ready to respawn yet. So let's just spawn an explosion. Well, we don't have an explosion ready to go, so let's go create one. So under sprites and under effects, we're going to load up a new effect. We're going to right click on effects, create a new sprite. I'm going to call this SPR underscore explosion. Now here, instead of import, because this is a sprite strip, we do want to go to edit image. If I chose import, I'll show you the wrong way to do this, so don't do this. If I click on import, I want to go to and load this explosion effect. So if I load that up, it creates this as the sprite, which is not what I wanted. So instead, what we're going to do is just go to edit image, and it'll replace this frame anyway. I mean, we could delete the frame up here and just take that frame out. But to import my sprite chip, if we go to image, then there's a thing here that says import strip image. And I think we could have used convert to frames to fix this, but import strip image does basically the same thing. So if we do import image strip, and then we choose the explosion, we get this convert to frames dialog opening. And you can see this little white box right here. That's how big these settings are trying to think each frame is. And you can clearly see that that is not the size of an individual frame. So maybe it's 64 by 64, and that's still not right. So we add 32 again, and we get 96. That looks about right. We can zoom in to make sure. And that does look like it's cutting it correctly. So then we just have to count how many frames this is. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is 12 frames, and there's 12 per row. Now we could set this to 11 just to make sure. You can see that that 12th frame just disappeared. So we know that this is 12 frames. And there's no spacing in between the frames, so we don't need to change any of those. Then when we hit convert, it's going to load our graphic. So we can close this. We want to make sure that we center it, so go middle center. And we can actually see what it looks like if we hit the play button. I might want to drop the frames per second down a little bit to maybe 12. And that's all the settings I need to do there. So I could copy my engine spark because it's basically going to use the same code as that. If we recall, the engine spark just has something here that deletes it when the animation finishes, and that's a pretty convenient thing to have. So let's just right click on Object Engine Spark, go to Duplicate, and we're going to call this Object Explosion. And then I'm going to double click Object Explosion, and I'm going to switch it to the explosion effect. So when we hit the X, we're ready to have the player spawn this now. So I'm going to go back to Object Player and back to where we're colliding with the asteroid parent and back to where it says spawn an explosion. So we're going to say var explosion equals instance underscore create underscore layer x comma y comma layer obj explosion. And if I say explosion dot depth equals -20, that will push it up so that it appears on top of things. Right now, we really haven't been playing with depth a whole lot in this project. Depth refers to the stacking order of things, and so lower numbers stack higher. So the camera is basically at negative infinity looking down on the world. So negative 20 is going to appear on top of anything else that happens to be depth 0. It's going to all default to 0. And then we will delete the player. So instance underscore destroy. Now, another thing that could be neat, if you want to change the size of your explosion, you can also tell it to modify the image X scale. So like if you want your explosion to be super huge, you could set image X scale to 2.0 and then set image Y scale to 2.0. And so you can actually, with code, scale up these explosions, which will be beneficial for our asteroids. When we make an effect for the asteroid to get destroyed, we can then also kind of dynamically make it smaller for the small asteroids. So when we hit play, asteroids should bounce off of each other, as we would hope. And we see that. And I'm not going to bounce off an asteroid. I'm just going to explode. And perhaps we want to put a sound effect on there. So let's jump over to sounds. Let's make a new folder here. Create group, and I'll call this effects. And then we're going to create a new sound. SND underscore explosion. And the sound effect I'm going to grab for that is, there should be a player, explosion player. And then that's going to be my explosion for if the player hits an asteroid. So we're going to go and make sure that we play that. And if you've forgotten how to play a sound effect, I believe we trigger it inside of our scripts. So it's just audio play sound. So when we're getting destroyed, we will do audio underscore play underscore sound, SND underscore explosion, the priority, which is 1, and then we do not want to loop it. And if you forgot those parameters, you can actually see it down here on the bottom, the sound ID, the priority, and the loop. And then these things in brackets are optional parameters. So if we hit play, now we have an explosion sound effect to go with my player hitting an asteroid. And so that's where we'll end this video. In the next video, we're going to actually get our weapons to hit asteroids and then get the asteroids to destroy themselves and spawn new asteroids when they are killed. So I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.